All of a sudden, just ahead of us on the left, there was this explosion. I grabbed Julia by the shoulder and said, don't look, because I knew that there was carnage.
Morristown resident Karl Fenske was running his 4th Boston Marathon on the day of the bombing. Take us through that last mile.
Well, we passed the Sit-Go sign, that tells you that you have a mile to go, and came under the overpass and up around a corner. The crowds were screaming their heads off, as they are every year, and we got onto Boylston Street. Boylston, the crowds are as thick as they possibly could be. There's no room at all on the sidewalks on either side of the street, and you can see a half a mile ahead is the finish line, a big archway. And then as we're running down the street, me and my girlfriend Julia went past the 26-mile marker, and we were running towards the finish line, picking up our pace. The crowds are screaming and yelling. It's almost like white noise. It's so loud. You know, everybody's saying, go, go, go. So all of a sudden, just ahead of us on the left, there was this explosion, which I felt like just a big, huge white cloud shot out from my left from the sidewalk, and the cloud was very thick. I smelled gunpowder, and then I heard it, and it was very loud, a very loud thud. And I grabbed Julia by the shoulder and said, don't look, because I knew that there was carnage. And I looked over, and sure enough, there was. But I turned her around, and just as I turned her around, the second explosion went off right almost in back of us. And we felt that, we felt the force of the air push us. We were on the right-hand side of the road, away from the explosion, but it was right there to our left. And that one, I think, actually forced the barricades open. So I knew at that point that there was something very dramatically wrong. And so I pushed Julia over the barricades to our right, and we hid in a sort of an alcove on the sidewalk.
Before we get there, let's go back for a moment. So the first blast goes off, and you felt something's wrong, something's not right here.
Right.
Julia, though, had a different impression at first, correct?
Julia, she didn't say anything, but she kept going, and that's when I grabbed her shoulder, and I grabbed her on the right-hand side and spun her around towards me, and I said, there's something wrong here. And then the smoke sort of cleared, and that's when I saw blood and carnage, and people were screaming their heads off. And it was a different kind of scream. It was a wail of anguish and pain, and people were running in every direction, and there were people on the ground, and there was a lot of blood, just blood, and people's bodies were not the way they should be.
Were you hit with any pellets or BBs?
The second blast, I felt, and I actually had black soot or something on my back. When I got home and put the clothes in the laundry, I saw these black dots all up the backside of my body. So I don't know what that was. I have no idea, but a body was blown in the second blast, and he was on fire. He was actually on the ground on fire, and he was not a runner. He was somebody who must have been on the sidewalk, and he was blown through the barricades and onto the roadway. And there were ambulances and personnel, policemen there immediately, and putting him out. putting the fire out. He was all black and soot all over his body.
You saw body parts as well?
And after the first blast, I saw a leg that was not attached to a body over on the sidewalk. But I glanced at a second, and then I turned Julia away from it. And thankfully, we had our backs to the second blast.
Did you think you were going to die?
No, I didn't have that feeling, although after we were huddled in the... people were screaming after the second blast, like, get away, run away from here. And that's when I thought, another bomb is going to go off any moment. And that's when, after we were huddled in the alcove and we saw them put the fire out of the man who was in the second blast, we ran out on the sidewalk and got away as quickly as possible from Boylston Street.
Now you had just done 26 long miles. Tell us what you were feeling after running all that. The finish line's in sight. It's always a big moment for a runner. Your reward is there, right?
I mean, I could feel and taste the Gatorade and pizza that they had on the other side. I mean, that's how close I was. Every molecule of my body wanted to get through that finish line. But the explosion, I knew, was wrong. I knew there was no way I wanted to go there. I knew I didn't want to go another step. I had to get away from there as soon as possible. And that was like, I wasn't thinking. It was just, instinctually, I knew that this was like a war zone.
Many people, after running 4 hours, 26 miles, have difficulty walking, standing, or anything. Did you get a second wind of some kind at that point?
Yeah, it was adrenaline. It was pure adrenaline because we ran away from the bomb a lot faster than I was running when I was running in the race before the bomb. I mean, we were sprinting. We were at a real clip. Now, after we sat down for a while and sort of got our wits about us, then, as happens to everybody, you get, really stiff. And so I was limping after that. The rest of the day, I was, sore as could be.
So after the blast happened, though, is it total chaos? Do you have any idea what's going on? What are those minutes and hours like right afterwards?
Nobody knew anything. Nobody had any good information. Nobody knew if the trains were running. Nobody knew if there were more blasts. Nobody knew what had happened. The security officers and the police who were stationed around the area had no clue as to what was going on. So there was no good information. Fortunately, my brother was on the internet and was able to get us information and was able to telegraph that to me via text messages. So we were able to get out of there. But it took hours because they had the streets completely blocked off.
So you had to make your way to a car that would have taken you 20 minutes to get to and took you several hours to get to.
We were parked in Wellesley, which is 10 or 15 miles out of town. And the trains didn't start running for several hours after the blast. And then we found a train that was running and were able to get out of town.
So you're an avid runner. Would you run the Boston Marathon again?
No. I'm not doing any more big city marathons. And it's not because I think it's going to happen again, and it's not because I don't support the marathons and the people who run them. It's just I wouldn't enjoy it. It would be not, I'd be thinking about this all the time, I think. And I don't need to do them anymore.
Any lingering injury from the blast?
I still have tinnitus. I still have a ringing in the ears, and I know Julia does as well. Even today we were talking about it, and this is a week after the events. But it's decreasing. Initially, after we couldn't hear ourselves think. I mean, we were yelling at each other to be heard. Everybody who was in the blast zone was yelling, and couldn't hear. But it's decreasing, thankfully.
This was not your first brush with death. was it?
No. I had another terrorist attack that I lived through, fortunately. So
When and where was this?
that was 71 in London, outside of the Empire Club in central London, near a naval recruiting station. The IRA set a car bomb off and blew the windows in. So I sort of had, I think that was helpful to me to know what a blast felt like. I knew this was wrong. This was not fireworks. This was not 4th of July. This was a terrorist attack. And sure enough, it was.
And are you a religious guy?
I believe in God, yes.
How has all this altered? Has it altered your outlook on life?
I am thankful that I was spared, and I think I might have used up a little of my good karma, so I need to... I said that to the people who helped us, who gave me their phone numbers after the event. Somebody fed us, somebody gave me clothing to wear because we were freezing cold. I said, I'll pay it forward, and I will. I'm saying that publicly.
You see this in your dreams?
Yeah, I still, every time I put my head down, I see it again. I see the white plume of smoke, and I see the chaos, and unfortunately I see the bloodshed, which is, I think, fueled by the constant press coverage. I think when that dies down, I'll probably be able to deal with it a little better. But it's so current, I'm getting a reminder every 15 minutes on the news.
There's been a lot of debate about whether the suspect should be tried with the death penalty. What are your thoughts on that?
I think in cases like this, we need the death penalty. I'm not a death penalty advocate. I'm a lawyer. I know we make lots of mistakes, but in a situation like this, we need the deterrent force of the death penalty. And I don't even know if that would help, but people who will do something like this are not fit to be walking this earth. And I'm not angry about it. I realize that Americans are not blameless when it comes to international relations, but I do know that this is wrong. This is so wrong to involve innocents and children and to create the kind of mass hysteria that which will have a ripple effect, for generations.
You mentioned an interesting story about the chaos at the scene, about someone inquiring about medals. Tell me that story.
Yeah, after we were wandering around in the street, I was looking for some way to get out of the central area around Boylston Street. I think they call it Back Bay, that area, that immediate area where the race finishes. A runner who I know had finished because he was wearing a finishing blanket on and nothing else. He had his running outfit on, not his clothes. So he hadn't gotten his. They give you a bag to put your clothes in that you can get at the end of the race, and he didn't have that. So anyway, he walks up to us and he goes, "Do you know how we're going to get our finishing medals?" Like, that was his concern, and it just seemed like, so you're so not in touch with what's going on here, and that was very characteristic of so many of the people that we talked to who had been in the race. They were focused on little trivia instead of the big issue, and I think that's probably how you deal with these things. I need to get someplace warm. I need to get some clothes on. I need to find some French fries. Anything to avoid thinking about what really happened. We laugh about it, but actually the Boston Athletic Association is mailing out the finishing medals. So he'll get his medal, thankfully.
So from here on, you pay it forward, huh?
I pay it forward, yep. And hope that I never have to experience that again. And I feel sorry for all the people who got tangled up in that thing. It's going to take a long time to get over.
Karl Fenske, thank you for sharing that with us.
All right. Thanks, Kevin.
Morristown.